to another episode of the Hot Topic Podcast with your host, Patrick Quanch.
It's good to see you, man.
Likewise.
Good to see you. How are you?
Good, good.
Yeah.
Hanging in. Year started off a little bit slow, but we're picking up. I think it's probably like somewhat industry wide. I think at the beginning of the year, I'm sure there's people that are crushing it based on customer base or based on industry. Um, but the general consensus for quite a few different industries was that it was a little bit slower at the top
Yeah.
after the top of the year.
Yeah. I know down here, everything's based on oil and gas, right?
Right.
Oil has jumped like crazy.
Yeah.
And honestly, activity's picked up, but not at
Mhm.
the pace that you would think. I think there's still a little hesitation in that it's not going to last. And it
Yeah.
really depends on what's being said in Washington. But
Mhm.
I think overall it's gonna be a good year. I
Yeah.
believe that. Yeah, man. So
Yeah. I mean, I think, you and I, but what the media says and what the general consensus frenzy is all about, and then really what's happening, in offices and the decisions that are being made, and profits and losses and purchases or acquisitions or offloads. What's really happening and what the media are saying sometimes don't exactly line up. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, man. Well, hey, why don't you take a moment and obviously you and I have known each other for a while, but I want our
Yeah.
listeners to get to know you and who you are and where you've been and how you've gotten to where you are. So yeah, man,
Sure.
introduce yourself.
Yeah. So, Brian McCarthy, commercial account manager over at Stoneham Ford. I grew up in Stoneham. I've been selling cars in various capacities for about 6 or 7 years, and then on the commercial fleet side for about a year and a half. I was on the retail side for the previous time, but I've always loved cars and trucks, and I don't know if like my brain is wired this way, but I can remember from a really young age like being able to identify like models and packages, even on like super, and it's kind of a silly thing, but it was just like a natural draw to that type of stuff. I can remember we were at my grandmother. Had this baby blue Cutlass, and we went to the grocery store or something, and we were in the parking lot. I had to be 4 or 5, so this was like 97, and we were in the parking lot. We were looking for her car, and I recognized it straight away, and I said, "Oh yeah, it's over there." And then so we go in, we put the bags in the trunk and everything. We get in the car, and I took one look at the dashboard, and I said, "Nanny, this isn't your car." And she looks around and she's like, no, it's not. But this was like, it was the mid to late 90s. It was kind of a different time. People didn't really lock their cars, I guess, at this small shopping plaza in Stoneham. And we like scrambled and got out of the car, and her car was like, 2 rows away. But at that young of an age, I took one look at the radio and I thought, this isn't it. And so the identification of like packages and cars and trucks and what they're capable of doing, and how they serve people, and it's just always been something that's on my mind, which sounds like kind of silly and maybe kind of crazy to say, but my dad was always a car nut too. We went out to Bowling Green a couple years ago after he retired, and we got a Corvette from the factory and did the factory experience, and it was just super cool. It was,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, now I live, just outside of Boston. I have with my wife and my 2 kids. Liam is 7 and Daisy is 1, and we got another one coming in May. So it's going to be
Oh wow.
a little bit of a zoo.
Yeah.
But it's just a season, man. It's just a season of your life. Like, I mean, you have kids, so like there's I'm 33, I think, last time I checked. And so um there's like, I don't know, what I've developed to think is there's just a season of your life where you just grind. You're treading water. You come up every 6 months, you take a breath and you go back down. And that's okay because it's just a season. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I am in it, and I got 10 toes on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled with my little family and kind of what we got going on, and my role here at Stoneham Motor Company. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So compared to the retail side versus the commercial
Mm.
space that you're in now, which would you prefer?
So I think I think I handle, like, maybe challenges or complexities a little bit better on the fleet side, and I definitely I would say that I love the fleet side. Don't get me wrong, the retail side is definitely exciting. Like doing the um, you know, going on test drives and keeping customers engaged throughout the process and walking them through and putting their mind at ease. Like there have been a bunch of customers that I have really really bonded with when I was on the retail side. Um, that just appreciated the way that we did the transaction. Um, but on the fleet side, it's a little bit more. Obviously, you're dealing with businesses, you're dealing with corporations, you're dealing with nonprofits or government sectors or municipalities. Um, and there's just a there's just a different, connotation to the transaction. You're like, yeah, sure, you might have, a little old lady that has a Focus, and she needs, an Escape or a Bronco Sport because she wants to be a little bit higher off the ground, and you're solving that problem for her, and there's utility and value in that. But then, to go from that to a massive I've had a shot to work with a lot of animal rescue places, like nonprofit animal rescue places up here. And I'm that's another I love dogs, love cats, have two smush face exotic short hairs at home, and I love animals. And so when I reached out to them to see if they needed anything, or if even just to give them my name and contact info, I'm not trying to haunt anybody at all. And they got back to me and they gave me a shot. It To be able to say, you know there was an animal raid where on a farm out in, western Massachusetts or wherever it was, and they helped all these animals, and the animals were returned to their central location in a van that I got a shot to coordinate for them. Like it trickles down. You know what I mean? It's not just, oh, I'm helping out this one customer with this one family vehicle. That it goes it the effective service, or the effective of, kind of positivity, kind of radiates out. um and it's and again, from somebody outside looking in, they're like, you just sold a transit van. It's not that big of a deal. But it's like, no, there were like horses and sheeps and cattle and dogs and cats that were in like deplorable conditions. And because of the vehicle that I got a shot to provide them, being reliable and being upfit correctly, and having, air conditioning installed in the back and all this other stuff, they were able to do their job, and they were able to support those animals. And that's just one example. But yeah, I do. I love the fleet space. I think it's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really dig it.
Yeah. I agree. I prefer the commercial fleet side of the industry myself.
Mm,
Um, to your point, I think there's some great opportunities on the retail side
mm-hmm.
to build some really good relationships. But what I found on the commercial side, those relationships are, I don't want to say they're closer or tighter, but you you talk to a commercial or a fleet customer more often than you do your retail customer. Your
Mm-hmm.
retail customer, if they're buying a car, let's say they're buying a car every 2 years, sorry, you're probably not going to talk to them, but maybe once a year, maybe, maybe a little more. But your commercial customers, you're generally talking to them all the time.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I like. Well, what got you in the industry? I mean, obviously your love of cars.
Yep.
Was it you just knew one day that you wanted to go sell cars, or how did that come together?
So I mean, I've done like kind of like a bunch of different stuff a little bit. I was in high school. I was really into studio art, and I went to art school in Boston. I went to the School of Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and had a whack at that. Wasn't really super into it, but producing meaningful artworks for assignments and curiosity, and to like kind of explore the way that I experience the world through art. Um, but I couldn't really kind of put it together over there, and so I left the kind of educational higher education space, and so, what, I got to go to work. And so um, for a long time I was digging holes at this local fence company, that and I did that for a long time, digging holes, putting sections together, mixing cement. It's not, glamorous by any means, but again, there's a direct correlation between I am executing this work right now, and by the end of the day, there's going to be a fence up in this guy's yard, and his dogs are going to be safe, his kids are going to be safe. They're not going to be any coyotes running through, or whatever it is. And it's instant gratification because I can see directly what's going on there. But then that I kind of that kind of lost its luster, and I wasn't I thought I can't really be digging holes for the rest of my life. And so I bounced around from place to place, and I've been a Zamboni driver at a ice rink. I've done I threw trash for 1 year, as a summer job in high school. But I it did it I kind of always got brought back to this idea of cars and this love for cars. And so I was like, you know what, like maybe I could do that. And so I applied to a couple of different places, and actually I worked at an Audi store, um, for a period of time. And obviously very, very different than what we do on the Ford side for retail or fleet, for Highline, German car maker, best all-wheel drive system in the world, in my humble opinion. Um, but it gave me a taste of what it was like, and it was awesome. I loved it. I loved it. And so just kind of through the evolution of that, and then I was also I wouldn't say a social worker. I was effectively a case manager and house manager, um, for different nonprofits and things like that. But yeah, yeah. So definitely drawn to the industry because of the love of the machines, because of the love and the interest of the cars and what they're capable of, and then stayed for the continuity and the development of the engineering and of the relationships that we get to cultivate every day because of the machines.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
yeah. What do you think's the biggest challenge? You said you've been in the fleet world for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
What's some of your biggest challenges that you face?
So I know, like on the retail side, right? Like you got a desk in the showroom, and you have maybe a CRM system, you got a phone, you got an email, they tee you all up, you have a cell phone, you got everything all good. But there is, like, relatively, I mean, pending market conditions and stuff like that, there are relatively like a fairly consistent flow of incoming leads, whether it be coming to the BDC, whether it be a warm body walking in on the lot or whatever. And so you get to up people right away. Um, and so on the fleet side, part of my role is cultivating new business. And that was a little bit different for me, from like a marketing standpoint, or from like an outreach standpoint, really breaking down how, because once I get in a room with somebody, or once I get somebody on the phone, once I have a text exchange or an email exchange with somebody, I'm confident that I could have a shot to connect with them. But it's getting there. That is like that's the big hurdle. And so I went through like I mean, I must have sent like, 1,500, 2,000 emails manually before I discovered what email campaigns were. And I effectively, you know, just I just researched email campaigns and how they work, and how do I set up a domain, and how do I secure that domain, and how do I, not wear it out and not use, like AI words, because eventually that domain, if you don't do it right, it will get flagged for spam, and then you can't use it anymore. And so I was really, really intentional about the way that I set it up, the way that I warmed it up, and the words that I was using, and how I was like making efforts to connect with people. Um, and that took probably, anywhere from 4 to 6 months just to get that like kind of perfected. Now, also, while that's happening, I'm still sending manual emails. But I mean, after that, once I got it all set up and running, and I had templates and I had everything put together, I mean, I've probably sent 20,000. So it allows you to increase volume, but it gives you a template to where you can you can set the time of day, you can set what day, you can increase content, include links, not include links, based on deliverability reports, based on so many different articles and things like that outreach, and effectively, um, getting in somebody's space close enough to where, um, because it's not really about just getting into somebody's space because I just want to be there and I want to occupy that. It's, I want to get into your space, sir, because I've seen trucks of yours on the road, and I know that the process that has been developed by my managers and the ownership over here, the process that has had momentum for the last 40 years, can add value to your vehicle procurement process, and like take out, minimize variables, because those guys, those landscapers, those contractors, the masons, the plumbers, those guys, they are professional plumbers. They are not professional vehicle searchers. You know what I mean? And sometimes there's a little like give and take, but if and this has happened where customers have given me a shot and given me, you know, have trusted me to almost act as if I'm like another appendage of their company, where it's like, okay, you have operations, you have accounts receivable, accounts payable, and then there's this guy over here. He doesn't actually work for us, but he works for us, if you know what I mean. And they know that every time they come and see me, that I'm gonna, I have no problem giving bad news. It's not necessarily bad. It's just, this is what it is. I can get it or I can't, or this is what you're looking at, and that that piece of, trying to get in front of somebody, you know, trying to make that connection. That's probably the biggest like initial challenge. But eventually you just put systems in place, whether it be cold outreach or emails or following up or text or whatever, um, to where it's a little bit easier to maybe make a connection. Um, LinkedIn is another huge resource. Um, I've found quite a few people, um, on LinkedIn and connected with them, um, and they've given me a shot. So yeah, I would say building up the book of business effectively from nothing, um, is probably something that a lot of earlier guys in the commercial account management role, could potentially be struggling with. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, on top of trying to figure out how you're going to go to market, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
what a lot of a lot of people that may be listening that aren't um, familiar with the inner workings of a dealership
Mm-hmm.
is they typically don't understand the struggles that we have when you're first getting started, right?
Yeah.
They
Yep.
um, the how to sell a vehicle, and I've proposed that to people, and they're like, I don't understand. What do you mean how? Well, if you're going to sell a retail, or let's say you're going to sell a vehicle with a retail method, it's face to
Mm-hmm.
face generally, but there's got to be a human connection there. They have to be able to they've got to be able to like you. They've got to be able to find value in what you're bringing to them, and then ultimately, it's not always about price, even though it is. But as a general rule, most everybody knows before they reach out to you
Mm-hmm.
what either what that vehicle is going to cost them or what they can afford. So they go in with this premise of, hey, as long as we're close here, we're going to be able to put a deal together.
Mm-hmm.
But that method doesn't necessarily work, let's say, for a government buyer, someone with a police department or a municipality, a city, a college, whatever. They buy differently. Even
Mm-hmm.
though they're human and they probably buy their retail vehicles or personal vehicles with a retail method, when they're sitting at their desk at their office,
Mm-hmm.
they have to meet certain parameters because of um, rules and laws and regulations that are put into place that changes the way that they view a transaction. Transversely, like you talked about, going out and knocking on doors, um, that's a different skill set as well,
Mm-hmm.
that not many people are very successful doing. Because let's face it, um, there is still a segment in the market that is looking for someone to come to them to propose, to create a connection, or whatever the case is. Not as much as it was, let's say, 20 or 30 years ago, but there's still a segment out there.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes a different skill set. Someone that's able to get in front of a customer and cultivate something from nothing when
Mm-hmm.
you're bringing the opportunity to them. If an opportunity comes to you, then generally that customer is in buying mode. They're there to talk about buying a vehicle. When you're bringing it to the customer, you're in relationship mode first. You have to build a relationship to be able to create the opportunity to find that buying opportunity. And that's tough because that's a much slower burn than a retail method of someone just coming in that's going to buy a vehicle within the next 24 to 48 hours. You just need to be able to put that together for them. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see where the methods that you're using can be very successful, especially if you have a store that is highly visible, and most
Mm-hmm.
dealerships are.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few dealerships that aren't visible. So, and I'm sure your dealership group does a really good job of advertising and marketing and things like that to be able to get the phones going. It sounds like you've done a really good job of outreach with now your email campaigns and things of that nature. And AI is going to make that even easier as we get further into the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have AI do a lot of things for you, all the way to answering phone calls and answering questions and things like that. I still think there's got to be that human connection, but I can see where that would be a struggle is customer acquisition, and that's probably true for most new people that come into the industry. They don't walk into a book of business, so they've got to figure out how to do it. So
Yeah. And for like one thing that has helped me is, I mean, not just in car, but in different arenas in life is just kind of expectation management where, you know, if I'm sitting on a retail floor and there's a guy that is out on a test drive and he comes back and he's pumped, he's psyched, and like he's in a good positive equity position in his trade and he doesn't, like I have an expectation or there's, it looks like there's a decent probability that this guy's going to buy a vehicle today. But the expectation for the shift has become now, okay, I'm going to send out 300 emails today, and I'm not going to see anything tomorrow. I'm not going to see anything the following day. So the efforts that the efforts that I'm putting in today, the expectation is maybe at some point further down the line, when their purchasing decisions are appropriate, or when their timeline is appropriate to make a purchasing decision, I have occupied enough space in their brain for them to potentially think about me, or I have made enough of a connection for them to potentially think about me, or to think about the store, right? And so, the shift of expectation going from retail to commercial, where retail is a little bit quicker turnaround, it's a little bit more immediate. But I mean, that's happened where last year I did an email campaign. I sent an email to this one guy, and I didn't hear from him at all. And just because they don't answer doesn't mean they're not interested. Just because they say, no right now, doesn't mean that they're not interested. Maybe it's literally a timing thing. Maybe it's a funding thing. Maybe it's they just bought 3 vehicles and they're not going to need anything until next year. And that's okay. The idea isn't necessarily to close a sale immediately right away. The idea is to, be personable, be likable, and put yourself out there, because eventually, like it happened with me last year, where I contacted this guy, he didn't answer me. And, there's obviously, you don't want to be a nuisance to these people. They're super busy. And so, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand if somebody's not answering you, then it's not the right time, or it's not a good deal right now. So, I pump the brakes, and then 6 months later, he emails me one line. He's like, I need 4 trucks. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's talk further with trim levels, color, bed size, whatever. And we wound up doing it for him. And so, like, a direct example of, I put in an effort 6 months prior, but the payout wasn't until 6 months later. And so that the shift of expectation of turnaround time to be able to execute the transaction has been big, because then you're not disappointed. You're not disappointed. You're not pounding your head against the wall, sending all these emails. And if the expectation, consciously or subconsciously, is I'm going to make a sale out of this, then you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get burnt out, and you're going to want to quit. But if the expectation is, hey, you know what? My job is to try to reach out to this guy and just try to make a connection. And if I do that, then I've done my part for today. And it will cultivate eventually if you play your cards right. If you follow up at a particular time of the year when their purchasing is in line with your outreach, or making short connections when it's not appropriate, and then saying, hey, I don't want to bug you if now's not a good time, totally fine. I do want to have a shot to show you how potentially we could serve you, or how we could have some mutual synergies that could work together well. Why don't I follow up with you in the 3rd quarter? Okay. And usually people receive that and they're like, yeah, you know what? Okay. Or they might just totally blow you off and say, no, leave me alone. I got my own thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I got my guy, and that's that. And that's also okay. But the more times that we do that, and the more times that we, make efforts to make those connections, then we have a shot to cultivate a book of business from like a genuine place.
Yeah. I think a lot of a lot of new sales reps, you said it best. When you go on that email campaign, you have to look at it as marketing and not advertising. And the difference is marketing, you're just trying to be top of mind for when they're ready to buy. Advertising generally comes with a call to action. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I have this vehicle on the ground. I only have one, not going to have any more ever again, or whatever,
Right.
right? There's a call to action there. And to your point, I think a lot of people get frustrated, or they pin a lot of their success on the email campaign,
Mm-hmm.
expecting it to be able to churn sales within 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, that's when you're trying to build a name, even though your dealership already has a name within the community, within the industry, within the region, whatever, uh, you don't have a name. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know where your dealership is, but I don't know who you are.
Yeah, right.
And I'm already buying from another guy
Mm-hmm.
now, or a lady. They're already buying from another person, which is fine. And really all you're looking for is, look, I'm not trying to get in the way of what you already have working. If it works, great. All I'm saying is, if there's an opportunity to help, let's say your person can't come through with a need that you have, just give me a call. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I can, but I want the opportunity. Maybe what you're asking for in the time frame you're trying to get is going to be very difficult to put together. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
business owner has a guy that unfortunately gets into an accident over the weekend. You
Mm-hmm.
find out Monday morning that he needs a vehicle. He calls his dealership. They don't have one. And he's like, well, my guy just can't stand around. I'm going to have to go find one. And then he starts calling around. Then he lands on you. Then that's the opportunity. It's like, yeah, I have one. Here we are. Now, of course, you're going to want to follow up with them and try to earn more of their business now that you've
Mm-hmm.
done business together. But, I think again, a lot of new sales reps, they get wrapped up in, well, I sold him one vehicle, I should be able to sell them all. That's not necessarily the
Mm-hmm.
case all the
Yeah.
time,
Right.
right?
No.
So,
No. Yeah, it's not. It's not. And in one of the other previous guests on your podcast, they were talking about potentially newer sales guys that are apprehensive about asking for the sale. And I agree with that. I think it is imperative to ask for the sale. I think there's all like the only thing I would add is, um, you know, when you're going through these like kind of early on conversations, whether it's quoting or general specking or even just trying to cultivate some sort of connection in order to like because everyone's been burned by a car guy, right? Um, and then we are like our industry has just had a notorious bad rap about that, which is a bummer, um, because there are like stellar guys that are out there that really take like a you know more of like a consultant or a consultative approach to where it's almost like, hey, let's like think openly about this. Like maybe this is the model that you're thinking about having, but is it possible that this could actually work for you better? And oh, by the way, you might be able to save some money, or I might be able to get this for you quicker, or whatever it is. Like there has to be some form of like adaptability um, uh, to be able to do that. It's not like, hey, Mr. Customer, you just walked into the showroom, you're a huge fleet customer, and I want to land a whale, so I'm gonna ask for the sale immediately and inappropriately, and that is the fastest way to to have somebody never call you back again. Um, there will be, I mean, customers will ask buying questions, and there will be a point where, again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know or have some form of interpersonal dynamics where okay, I just asked this question, he just answered this way, he just asked me this question, I just answered this way. This conversation is leading towards me asking for the sale, and I know it, and he knows it, and it's okay for me to ask for it when we get there. And there almost like shouldn't be any trepidation on it, or any fear about it, because I mean he's talking to a commercial account manager. He's talking to a sales consultant. He's there. You don't go and talk to a vehicle sales consultant because you want to, you know, um, do something other than purchase a vehicle. Like there's intention there. And so if it's organic enough and if it's like humanistic enough, that uh, you know, well, will this one work for you? Do you want to, do you want to buy this one? Will you take these three or whatever? That kind of inserts itself almost or that stuff almost happens organically. Um, to where it's really not this like contentious or anxiety ridden thing of asking the question.
Yeah,
Yeah, it almost kind of sells itself in a way.
it does. And I
Yeah,
think people, well, I know everybody has a different method to closing.
sure. Yep.
And whatever works, I've had a lot of, over 30 years, as you can imagine, I've had a lot of next gen ask me various questions, but hey, when do you know that you're close to a sale? I was like, well, you'll know. And there's
Mm-hmm.
no really way to explain it, to quantify it. It's
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it's a feel. It's where have you gone? Have you answered all of the customer's questions? That's number one, right? Does the customer now feel comfortable with the answers that you've given them in a way where they feel like you can take them to the next step?
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and I think what young salespeople do, they feel like the next step is a literal step, like we're
Mm-hmm.
going to go from here to here. Well, in reality, yes, that is the case. However, there's got to be a blend.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
um, uh, early on in my career, I've always heard always be closing the ABCs.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yep. Yep.
okay, that might have been true at some point, and I'm sure that it was, but I don't think it applies today. There's more education coming into the conversation than there ever has been.
Sure.
Generally,
Mm-hmm.
your customer has a really good idea of what they want and what they want it to look like. You just need to be able to say, yes, I can put this together for you. Now let's figure out your pain points. And if I can get those pain points handled in a way that you're comfortable with, then I'm going to take you down the path of figuring out how are we going to get this vehicle purchased. Are you good with things? A lot of salespeople, new salespeople, should I say, they tend to want to fast track that. Like, okay, well, I've
Yeah.
already taken them here, I've already taken them there, and they didn't buy. It's like, well, maybe you rushed it a little bit. Maybe your closing technique needs to be tweaked a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
along those lines, let me just say this. You made a point earlier, and I meant to talk about this. For people out there that feel like there's some bad car salespeople, overwhelmingly in my years, there have been and always will be some bad people in those situations. But
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmingly, I don't know anybody at your dealership other than you, but I'd be
Yeah.
willing
Sure.
to bet that 99% of the people that work underneath that roof
Mm-hmm.
do have a servant's heart and they do want to take care of the customer. That's why they're there. There's always going to be the one exception here or there, but typically you can spot those people fairly easily and you know to avoid them. But for people that feel like that they can't trust salespeople, I'm going to tell you that you can trust salespeople. Where there's more transparency today than there was when I first got in the business in the early 90s. Um, when I got in the business in the early 90s, there weren't window stickers on pickups.
Right.
You can just come up with whatever price that
Mm-hmm.
you wanted. So
Yep.
that lent to the fact that customers didn't feel like their salesperson was being transparent with them. Well, you could have that argument because the OEM wasn't transparent about that vehicle. So it lent to some people taking advantage of that with people. Yes, I could see where that's the case. Today, a consumer can generally go out there and find anything they want about a retail style vehicle and be able to know generally where they can buy and what seems like a good deal. Most salespeople on the retail side are just an avenue to be able to put that together. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to be able to take advantage of customers as there was 30, 40 years ago. There's just not
Correct.
that opportunity. So
Yeah.
a lot of people that sit behind the desk that are working with customers, it's more about, let's try to make a deal because I want to sell you the next one. That's
Hmm.
genuine. I
Yep.
fully believe that 99% of the salespeople out there want to be able to take care of you in a way that you'll buy from them again.
Hmm.
So my point to all that is, if you're out there and you're listening or you're watching, thank you for one.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the other thing is, you really don't have a whole lot to worry about. You've already done your homework. You've already got experience in doing this. The person that you're going to meet at the dealership, as a general rule, 99% of the time they're there and they want to take care of you. So anyway, I wanted to kind of say that because I still get people, and I'm sure you do too. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
I got messed around on a car deal and I don't
Hmm.
trust anybody. It's trust issues. And they want you to help them because they trust you, which is great. I understand that, but there's a lot of other great people out there that are willing to take care of you. So anyway, I just wanted to say that as well. So
No, no, it makes sense, and it's a good point because I mean, you know, there's probably a lot of us, whether in car industry, whatever, where you can you can smell desperation coming off of a salesperson, right? And when they're in that space, when they're in that spot, they are desperate for the sale and the revenue that is generated from that sale. And of course, they're a salesperson. Their role is to generate revenue for whatever parent company, whatever business, whatever, whatever. That I totally understand that. However, when again talking about expectations, when the expectation that you have for yourself is my expectation is to generate revenue and money, 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 that it's exuded, it's brought out. And so, one way that I think about it is like, okay, obviously, like there hasn't been a single time where I have taken care of somebody or gone out of my way or made a concerted effort to work with somebody and do everything that I absolutely can to make their process easier, faster, clearer, more of an understanding, more objective, that I haven't been paid for. There's never been a time. And so the goal, like if I'm here and the revenue is here, the real expectation, the real goal is taking care of people in the middle. Because I know that if I take care of people and if I become obsessed with what they need and the problems that they're having, and if I make every genuine effort to support them through that process, the pay, the income or the revenue that is generated from that is a side effect of taking care of people. It is a byproduct of taking care of people. And so therefore I would rather be more obsessed with cultivating a relationship, taking care of somebody, because that stuff is long game. That stuff is, the other, the money, like that stuff is fleeting. The actual relationship we have a shot to cultivate with a customer that is, it's an infrastructure customer. They're building buildings that are going to be there for 60, 70, 100 plus years. And like, that's a cool relationship to have. And when you take care of that person, you have an opportunity to like play a very small role and be a very small cog in this big machine that they appreciate, and you get to be involved. um so it's cool. It's cool. I
it
really
goes
love
it goes back to, on the retail sales floor, you sell a car and you build a relationship.
it. Hmm.
In the commercial department, you build a relationship and sell a car.
Without a doubt.
That's the difference. And
Yeah.
that's what carries us. That's what allows us. And honestly, and I'm going to say one more thing about the interaction, right?
Hmm.
For me, anyway, when I was selling, I always felt like whoever would allow me to do my job generally,
Hmm.
generally got
Yep.
a better deal.
Yep.
They did. If I
Yep.
had a customer, and I know this is a very foreign thought for a lot of people, just to say, okay, at carte blanche, I trust you. You take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have trepidation in letting that control go. But when I sensed that my customer trusted me 100%
Mm-hmm.
to do the right thing, almost 100% of the time, they got a better deal than someone that was willing to beat me up all the time.